Hello, and welcome to episode 13 of my YouTube channel, The Dichotic Dilemma, The Fabric of Life, a channel that I created and dedicated to reading and exploring my first book, The Dichotic Dilemma, which I wrote and re-edited when I was 21, and then re-edited at 26, and is available on Amazon. It was my first real expressive reaction to human existence. And I have been writing upon reflection now from a very young age. I've always enjoyed creative writing. It's only something that I've realized in the last few weeks, actually, months of reflection, because it's only now that I really acknowledge myself as a writer or someone who writes, because I have amassed 10 manuscripts. So I think at that stage you can perhaps acknowledge yourself in that way. Otherwise, it's always been something I did as a coping mechanism. But also when I was younger, I just enjoyed it. I just used to write notepads. I used to write. I enjoyed English language, English literature, and I just enjoyed writing. And so in a way, it's not a surprise that I find myself where I am with this book, The Dichotic Dilemma. And I'm also excited to say that I have the new version, the new updated version of The Dichotic Dilemma. I just received it yesterday with the glossy new cover and package, which is very thematic and dramatic, and really in a way displays the duality that I was trying to describe. I have a new publisher who were very good in their graphics team and designed this for me. And I was truly excited for the first time that people were starting to see what I saw, because for a long time I just wrote and I was just alone with my thoughts, and I had no real reflections from others about my content. And I went through various periods of doubting myself, quite significantly so on some occasions, that I removed the book from Amazon at least 4 times as I was going through different crises of confidence and anxiety, and life just pulling you in one direction and the other, which is also another thing that I'll talk about. But just to present the book, so this is the new cover, The Dichotic Dilemma, The Fabric of Life, available on Amazon. And this is my first physical copy, so this is very special for me. This is the first time I'm holding it, or at least it arrived yesterday, but it's the first time I'm sharing it with you on screen. So it's a very special day for me, 27th, Saturday, 2024. And I'm really going to enjoy reading this and exploring it. And I say that quite significantly as well, because when I wrote the book, because I write as a stream of consciousness, and so quite a lot of the times, even what I mean eludes me. And so perhaps it's an affirmation that there's a certain providence, there's a certain perhaps divinity, without getting too dramatic. There's a certain channeling that is occurring, because surely if they're my words, I should be able to understand them. But only, so 21, I'm 39 now, turning 40. So almost 2 decades later, do I fully appreciate the concept that I was trying to, or at least that descended down onto me when this dichotic dilemma came into realization. And I'm also proud to say that this way of interpreting reality, the dichotic dilemma, the fabric of life, is something that I'd like to make quite ubiquitous in the lexicon of human existence, so that if people can understand it the way I do, and at least I can promulgate the message the way I see it, I'm very confident I can make the difference that I want to make in the world. And so it's at this point that I really want to thank God that I'm still alive, for I might not be right at this point, at my own hand at that. That's how much I've suffered in the last 7 years with depression and various other things. And but I really understand in a very deep way when they say God works in mysterious ways. And also I appreciate in a very deep way that we really are spiritual beings having an earthly existence. And until you really fall into that paradigm, human existence is truly confusing. And it's truly something you can't understand when all the things that we see in the world are happening as they are, you know? So spiritual beings having an earthly existence caught up in some kind of paradigm, some kind of battle between opposing polarities. We can call them good and evil. We can call them light and dark. At the very least, at the moralistic, social, existential paradigm that human beings exist in. And this is quite a lot of which I was trying to illustrate in the dichotic dilemma, to posit and elaborate and really display the fact that we live in an algorithm of understanding. And if you were to permeate that, as in The Matrix, the movie, for an example, you see that you are in some kind of simulated reality in a theoretical sense, based on how you perceive reality. And so if you were to be able to bridge that, you can go into another reality. And the reality that I believe in is a reality of love, a unified field of love for human beings, because that is the only answer to who and what we are, you know. And I was just reading before I did this. I came on this call. I came on this reading about the International Criminal Justice Court passing a ruling on what's happening between Israel and Palestine. And in a very legal language, proposing that it's perhaps genocidal. And the retort from quite a lot of the Israeli public officials was to say, well, we can't be genocidal because Israel was created to fight genocide. And actually it sounds quite similar to when black people say, well, they can't be racist because white people are racist. And you start to see the mirror effects of just the opposing and nature of human existence. And then I watched a video about the British oppressive crackdown on the Mau Mau uprising in Kenya, and they were interviewing an officer who was in charge of a lot of the concentration camps, really, that they had created to quell that uprising, and he was really still belligerent, unrepentant, and still full of venom and threats, and even threatened the reporter who was interviewing him, and not a very veiled threat of the violence that he wished to inflict upon him for asking him these questions. And what's the other thing that I saw just in passing? I do try and avoid the news as much as possible. The other thing was, it was Gary Lineker, and it's a good man. And he was saying that he just didn't understand how wanting peace was such a controversial thing. And he was being attacked for proposing that maybe peace could be a good idea. And just how fascinating is it that this is the world, you know? And but that's the dichotic dilemma. It really is. And at least in the last 2 years, I've really, like an epiphany, I got it. I wrote the book, but I got it. And then all of a sudden, I started seeing it everywhere. Not as a concept, but as a realization of the proof of concept, the proof of the reality of the supposition that I had made. When the war in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia started, COVID deniers, supposedly COVID deniers, and people who believed in COVID. And what I found miraculous was, as soon as COVID came into existence, as it were, immediately there was a movement for and against it. Just sprung out into existence as though it had been waiting for and being created in the last decade. How quickly people got into such distinct adversarial positions, as divergent as the other. And not only that, was the supposedly factual argument of either side proposing ideas as disparate from each other from supposedly highly informed sources on both sides. And then so you say, how do we even begin to propose what is truth, and to propose that something is an absolute truth, when one expert versus another expert can tell you completely different things with the same facts or with different sets of facts on the same issue. And then I was watching the final in the morning, in the early hours of today, to illustrate that it's not just in the political or in the superstructure of existence, but just in our everyday life. And as I was watching the documentary of the final between Naomi Osaka and Serena Williams, when Naomi Osaka was looking like the heir apparent, and Serena Williams was about to get it, would have gotten her 24th Grand Slam to equal Margaret Court. And then the controversy that ensued with the umpire, Carlos Ramos. And then how quickly again people got into their camps about who was right and who was wrong. And of course, Serena with her many detractors, some definitely racially motivated, like we saw with the cartoon in Australia, where Naomi Osaka, who isn't even a white, blonde, tall, skinny girl, was portrayed as such, and Serena was portrayed in those very racist, really, connotations, as big lipped ape shouting at everyone, insane black jungle, whatever is in the minds of these people when they create these images. And the sun in the United Kingdom, or whatever sun it was, just had her looking like some kind of big lipped, just preposterous, embarrassing, really, embarrassing. And if you think of all the controversies that her and her sisters faced as they came into tennis, officiating that was uh, abominable. And even the Hawkeye system having to be brought in just to maintain the integrity of the sport because of a line call which was called to be out when it was so in. Even Stevie Wonder would have seen it, and Ray Charles, and you know, and the deceased folk lying in their graves and cremated, you know. And again, that's a duality. That is the dichotic dilemma of existence, and what she's had to go through to pave the way, as they say. The first black this, the first black that, and the resistance of, at least the perceived resistance of whites and Europeans against the progression of these supposed subordinates, which are apparently those of my hue, supposedly. So then it is existence. And this is what I had to go through to then figure out life, and then how this book manifested, the dichotic dilemma. Because for some, must have been a spiritual knowledge. I knew that, well, there must be good. Oh yes, and I do say in the book it was aided by, in this existence, by coming to Europe, in United Kingdom, and living amongst people who seem so different, and even marrying a white lady, if you wish. Now I have mixed race children. It challenges your whole conceptualization of reality. It has to. And then at the end of the day, you have a message to tell. And so that's all I have. And ultimately, life is about stories. And I find it beautiful that in antiquity, our traditions in Africa relied on oral history. In a way that has its disadvantages because you've got nothing written down, but it is so beautiful where you can sit down together and tell stories about how you're experiencing this reality, and how it's occurring to each one of you, and what a rich understanding you can then have inside of that. And that's my intention with my writing, is just to tell my story. And so far, my story is being born in Zimbabwe, coming to England when I was 16, and typical African education, job, responsibility, which is quite opposite to what some detracting racists would like to tell you about what black people are. In my world, it's full of intellectualism, education, striving, hard work, incredible ambition and the desire to maximize your potential. So I don't identify with any of the derogatory epithets that you see on Fox News or anything like that about black people. It's a story. And so I'm here to tell my story. And I'll be grateful if you could hear it. And so then marriage and then I went in this meditation retreat, which again is an interesting accident by God and coincidence, where I was really lost in the material of existence, and yet I knew that there must be more in the spiritual sense of existence, but I just couldn't see it because God, unless you have attuned, it just isn't going to look as if God is present, which is part of the illusion of separation and what has you be able to have your existence. You know, you must be lost, otherwise you couldn't be. But that's for a later time. And this is part of the spiritual growth that I've had since that meditation retreat, which in the first instance seemed like the worst thing that could have happened in my life and almost took my life because I got initiated into something that I didn't even know existed and was beyond my level of training, understanding, insight, and basically don't just get involved with things you don't know about. Is the and I think in this modern day where a lot of cultural practices, a lot of things are commercialized and taken out of context, and people are not really desensitized about certain realities. People you can operate with a lot of naivety, and so that'll be my warning that if you're going to get involved with anything, just like if you're going to run a marathon, at least do some training before. Otherwise, you never know what predispositions you have, and you have a heart attack and you die. Some might do it and be fine, wearing a big costume, but generally speaking, to have a high percentage of success, you need to be conditioned and ready. And I wasn't. And so I crashed and burned. So my test was to survive and see how strong I was. But in the end came a spiritual awakening, if you wish. And so I can speak with a deeper understanding of what is happening to me and what has happened to me and what human existence is about. And I can synthesize all of those aspects of reality, the material dimension and the spiritual dimension, and hopefully be able to elaborate on what our life is in a way that can bring some peace and love into the world. And my final, at the moment, series of books, I've been writing so much, I literally have to tell myself to stop. So much poetry is equanimous musings on existence. And the fact that I could ever find equanimity or even be in the conversation of equanimity in my human existence is miraculous. It's upon the same trajectory as Mike Tyson being Mike Tyson at 19 and the Mike Tyson who he is now at 50. That's how much rage I had. And I'm not saying I'm Mike Tyson, but I'm saying I was an angry man. And perhaps that's one stereotype that fit the angry young black man. That was me. I'd I'd enough rage to cover the whole universe. That's how angry I was at life. That's the story I'd inherited about racism and injustice and all of these things. And yet now I write about equanimity. And so that's the power of transformation. And that's what I seek to bring to the world, the intention. And to show that even the most ardent racist, which I probably was, to be fair, can change and be transformed. And I think was it something I saw about the Swedish or something, Danish or someone, this blonde-haired chap, Prime Minister-elect or President-elect talking about Muslims this and Muslims that and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, wow, so here we go again. It's never going to go away, And it's what does it say? It's a religion of destruction and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, I don't know. Have you ever read the Old Testament there, fella? And oh, yeah, but there's the New Testament. It's all relative, really. And anyway, and I know Muslim people, so I know that it's talking a lot of nonsense. And it's as the saying goes, there are bad apples everywhere. So maybe he's a bad apple before he starts pointing at other bad apples. As the Bible says, you point at the splinter in someone else's eye when you have a log, not a splinter, but a log in your own eye. He without sin cast the first stone. And quite a lot of the time, the one making most of the accusations is the one with the most to hide. And on that note, I will I'll make my first reading for at least 5 years. Was it 2019? 4 years perhaps, when I got waylaid by life, and resurgent I am, and here we go. So, the Dichotic Dilemma, the fabric of life. I showed my father the cover, and he said it's beautiful, so that's good enough for me. And I hope you do too. So my thinking is very discursive, as they say. It's all over the place. And so we go everywhere with this. And I met a friend, and I have a new book out called Ottilie Rose, a collection of poems. And she read the book, and she said that it's as though you thought about everything. And in many ways, that's definitely how it felt. And so to have it reflected was reassuring and affirming, and a reflection that it was appreciated. So I hope you can appreciate the way my book is written. So We live in times of revelations. Money, the evidence is all around us. The devil is alive and at work. Ignorance is his main ally, hence the unforeseen carnage that prevails today. For he has made it so that everything can distract the mind, so we can never know the truth. So just as a reminder, I wrote a lot of poems and then I analyzed them, as you would in a literature class. And that's essentially what the Dichotic Dilemma is. And so that was the poem, or at least the writing or thought, or if you wish. And this is the analysis. As I mentioned before, by virtue of my religious upbringing, my definition of the things I observed in my youth was colored by religious overtones. Yet again, it becomes a matter of perspective. As mentioned at the beginning of the book, I do not believe in the personified idea of God. Consequently, the same belief pertains to the devil. Certainly in religious teachings, especially in Christianity, as I am more familiar with it, the devil is someone or something that influences us to do bad things. I remember being young and at church being told to listen, and you can hear the good and the bad angel influencing you on how to act in a situation. What we call the conscience. Certainly that is without denial. I'm sure everyone experiences that discourse in their mind as we go about making our decisions, with some more inclined to being at each end of the spectrum. However, again, as has been proposed, to speak of evil is to not look deep enough. The real question to ask is why we experience this in the first place. Evil suggests absolute free choice and absolute free will. However, I suggest that free will is relative and is a relative and limited function predicated upon by the pillars I've mentioned: instinct, the dichotic dilemma, and our higher functioning minds, which are influenced and present in myriad ways by and present in myriad ways by virtue of circumstance. The question then again is to ask is, if not free will, the devil and evil, then who and what are we, and why are we here? Again, the mention of money as a specter of evil is the result of, I believe, the religious indoctrination, which has a powerful effect on perceptions and perspective. It is a variable in many ways that should be used with the deepest wisdom and care. Another dilemma indeed. In any case, with regards to money, fundamentally, it is a route towards survival. Chasing it and overvaluing its importance above all else is abiding to the dictates of the basic survival instinct, with resultant effects being perceived carnage mentioned in the poem. And then I will read the next one because it's quite short, and then I'll bring it to a close. So just before I do that, I write to make people think. I write to not perhaps make people uncomfortable, but to shake them up a little bit from their um, from the fixed positions of their um, idealization of their existence, particularly obviously over matters that are divisive and cause human suffering. So even as I read that, I was challenging, I was getting challenged myself and having to think. And as I was reading, it was making me think, and then I was actually discovering more, even more about what could be discovered by having your preconceived ideas challenged. So that was pretty cool. So this one says 1.6, I have loved. For me, love is you and you are love. The good and the bad. I just hope we can work it out. For she has conquered my heart in a way it can never be conquered again. She is the personification of beauty and all things beautiful about this world. She is raw, she's beautiful, and I love her. Hopefully, we can unite forever. Some say if you ever truly love someone, no matter what, you will always love them, and indeed love them till your last day. It is certainly good and edifying to hold on to our more positive attributes. Love is one of them. And when love is applied in a way that truly conquers our lesser selves, the true value of the phenomenon can be realized individually and collectively. I'm still a young man at 26 years of age, but I would say I've already learned greatly from experiencing and coming through the torments which can arise from deep emotional commitment. Definitely a brighter side to life can be realized from this. It is a unifying notion, a notion based on understanding. Well, suffice it to say, I'm a hopeless romantic, and uh, and I'm very quick to fall in love, and um, and that's probably a good thing. But as we know, the dichotic dilemma, there's always two sides to the coin. And what's that UB40 song? Wise men say only fools rush in, but I can't help falling in love with you. That's that's really beautiful, and I just got it because that's been my life so far. Um, and But love is always beautiful, and no matter what you do, you should never get cynical about it because it's always there around the corner. And just like the sun rises and the sun sets, you don't stop believing in the sun because it's nighttime. and yeah, so that's um that's a great way to conclude, I think, on my first reading of the Dichotic Dilemma. And I met a lady who wrote a book called Welcome to the Fifth Dimension, The Ascended Masters I bought it when I was going through, well, what the Western Clinical Lexicon calls psychotic episode. In some contexts, it's a spiritual awakening. Some call it transpersonal experience. I call it transcendence, multiversal, multidimensional existence. And in any case, whilst I was still in that battle, I had to speak to her. I just had to, because at that point in time, I was a lost atom in free space, and I had to get into the gravitational orbit of something that would make things make sense. And I spoke to her, and she shared so much, a lot of which I didn't understand at the time. This was about 2020, but a lot of which I understand now. And it was an initiation into a deeper understanding of our existence here on the planet. And she said that your mission in life is not to save anyone, which I erroneously thought, and hence why I was obsessed with racism and my skin color and Africa and all of this stuff and the malice of the white man. It has to be stopped. I was in a warring mentality. And she said, your job, and I thought I was here to finish off Martin Luther King's job, you know. And she said, your job is to heal yourself, find love and peace in yourself, and then say to everyone, look, I did it. You can too. The epiphany landed on me about 2 years ago, but the manifestation of the result and the beingness of it is only materializing now. So that's what I have to share with the world now. I'm no longer a black nationalist, a racist, a warrior, angry, untrusting. I'm still learning, I'm still growing, but I'm firmly in the conversation and understanding. So thank you very much.